My name is Chad Etzel. I'm the host of the 8th Day Coaching Podcast. Thank you for tuning in today. I'm also a trained and certified leadership coach, and my goal is to help you overcome stress and master your time, your money, and your God-inspired future. Now, typically this podcast is about leadership coaching, but I've been encouraged by a number of my friends, a number of the people that I've talked to apply these leadership coaching principles into our personal lives. And specifically with this new series, I'm calling it Catholic, Single, and Flourishing. The goal of the series is to help you as Catholic singles live your God-inspired calling, your vocation today, but also pave a path for the future. So feel free to check out this episode, check out the description in the show notes below, look for the links for the new podcasts and ways that you can connect with me, and also check out a free resource. It's an ebook that I wrote about helping Catholic singles break the cycle of pressure and inaction. With that, here we go with the episode. Hello, and welcome into this episode of the 8th Day Coaching Podcast. I am your host, Chad Etzel, and today I am coming to you from a different place. If you're watching the YouTube feed, as you can see, this is a different studio. I'm actually back in Oregon visiting my parents at this time, so very blessed to have this scenic look behind me. And if you're just listening to the audio, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. It's in the show notes. It's linked there, so you can check that out at your own leisure. But today I'm going to be talking about why asking what's wrong with me is asking the wrong question. This topic has come up a couple of different times. I was actually surprised. I heard this in several different conversations that I had over the course of time as I was preparing for this podcast, that men and women would be asking this question: is there something wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And a lot of times this would come up in the context of, yes, I'm following all the things that I'm being told to do in dating, and I feel like I'm doing the right things. I'm just not getting the results that I want. So for instance, men asking a woman out on a date and saying the word date, going out on a date, holding the door for her, giving her the best view on the date, but it not going past a couple of dates or two. Or for women, a lot of times what happens is they go on the date and they're engaged in the conversation. They're helping to ask questions about him and getting to know him. They're doing the right things but not seeing progress. Or maybe it's just the question of you're just not getting any dates, even though you think you're doing the right things. You're going to the events, you're trying online dating and so on. We're doing the process we think which is right, but we're not seeing the results that we want. And when that happens, when we think that we're checking the right boxes, doing the right things, and the results aren't coming, a lot of times there can be that question that I've heard in both men and women of, is there something wrong with me? Or even, what's wrong with me? So this can come up. And so I thought this would be a great show, great time to talk about limiting beliefs. I think that this is so important in today's day and age, especially for those who experience a state of perpetual singleness, to reflect on those limiting beliefs. What's really holding us back? These limiting beliefs are at the root of us asking that question. I've done all the things right, so what's wrong with me? What is holding me back? So that's what this episode is all about, is really diving into limiting beliefs. It is a situation that is understandably frustrating because we're trying to do everything right. We're trying to get the results, but we just aren't getting the results. So it's a natural thing for us to be asking, is there something wrong with me, or what's wrong with me? But this, I think, is actually part of the problem of what's holding us back from getting the results. And that's because we are getting stuck in our head. We're getting stuck in our limiting beliefs. In addition to that, I just want to explain why I'm calling it this episode, why asking what's wrong with me is the wrong question. There's several reasons for this. A lot of times when we're asking what's wrong with me, that's where our mind goes. It goes to what's wrong rather than what's right here. We begin to focus on what's wrong. We get stuck maybe in a state of self-pity. That may vary from person to person how much we get stuck into that. But we get stuck in this place of self-pity instead of identifying those empowering thoughts that are actually going to push us forward and actually move us forward in life. And I think this question also distracts us from asking what are those productive beliefs? What are those empowering thoughts that gives us those actions that are actually going to drive the results that we are expecting? And in this case, when it comes to dating in our single lives, what's going to give us that confidence in that encouragement to move us forward? Everybody has limiting beliefs, which I think this is an episode that can appeal to everybody, even though our topic, once again, is about dating. These limiting beliefs apply to all areas of our lives. A lot of times these limiting beliefs originate, or they have, maybe not originate, but they have some sort of connection to filling in this blank of I'm too blank, or I'm not good enough to blank. It could have to do, as I said, with our careers, any area of our life, our career. I just don't have the temperament, or I don't have the personality to do sales or marketing or what have you, or to be an entrepreneur. I just don't have the personality. Or maybe it's our physical health. Well, I just don't have the motivation. I just don't have the motivation to get to stick to a diet. That's just not the type of person that I am, to exercise on a regular basis. And it holds us back. Or even our personal finances as well. I'm just not a disciplined enough person to get on a budget and stick to a budget. All these different areas of life, we have these different limiting beliefs that hold us back from achieving the results that we want. In speaking about dating in this new series of Catholic Single and Flourishing, this is an area that we really, I think, becomes amplified a lot of times because our culture tells us that your fulfillment comes through your romantic relationship, that the fulfilled life is about having that romantic relationship and being this type of person who is able to win over this woman or this man. So that's why I really want to talk about this in the context of dating, because it's so amplified in our culture today. A lot of times this limiting belief when it comes to dating, as I said, I'm not good enough to blank. A lot of times it's some variation of I'm not attractive enough. And that may not be the words that you say. Yours may be very specific to you. These I'm not attractive enough or I'm not good enough to blank oftentimes do arise from certain insecurities that we have. And maybe they're even legitimate in terms of where they come from. That there may be a past experience like a breakup or a relationship that just went very poorly. Then we begin to identify with that past experience. Maybe it's even something that comes from our family of origin. So there's a deeper wound there that may be something to deal with more so in a counseling or a therapy setting as opposed to a coaching setting. But every single one of us has limiting beliefs. Every single one of us has these limiting beliefs in these different areas. So that's what I really want to speak into in today's session of this podcast. Again, too, I also want to point out with our limiting beliefs, there may be certain realities that are true about these beliefs. So for instance, somebody saying I'm too short or I'm too tall. There are realities of women being unwilling to date shorter men or men just being insecure about dating taller women. There are realities there, and I think it's important for us to acknowledge that there are realities there. But at the same time, they don't completely hold us back from achieving the results we want. Going back to what I've said before, how many women am I trying to win over? Just one. So that ultimately doesn't hold me back from being a virtuous man and being in a good, strong relationship with a woman. Another one that oftentimes comes up, I'm too introverted. It's just not my natural tendency to be outgoing. These are some examples of limiting beliefs that hold us back, but there's plenty of others that I think maybe you're even thinking about ones that hold you back. I think it's important to spend some time thinking about those, processing through those. What are those things that are really holding me back from taking steps forward in my dating life or in any other area of life? There's different levels to which these limiting beliefs might impact us. I'm just going to go into a couple right now, and we could have a whole seminar on limiting beliefs and overcoming limiting beliefs. But a lot of the limiting beliefs that really hold us back are those that are tied to our identity. And I mentioned being too short or too tall, having a certain body type. These are things that really are connected to us and our identity. Our personality is another one of those that may be very connected to our identity and can hold us back because they're so personalized. Then getting a little bit more distant away from our identity, maybe our habits. They're not so much a part of us, but they're things that we tend to do. Maybe we have bad habits that are off-putting to others. So if maybe we become lackadaisical when it comes to our financial decisions and our budgeting, maybe that's something that may be off-putting to somebody long-term in a relationship. Another thing could be off-putting comments. If we have a habit of saying things, whether it's related to politics or religion or something that just could be somebody could take very personally. We have those off-putting comments. We can learn how to grow from those, but we shouldn't get stuck in just keeping those stuck on our identity. That's something that we can grow in and change about. Other things might be lying about our height on our online profile. Don't do that. If you do that, I've heard that most people do that. I don't do that. I don't like to do that because that is lying and you shouldn't do that. That's something that just obviously does not leave a good impression with anybody, but that's something that is changeable. Could be a habit. Maybe that's not the best example here. But anyway, I want to just explain something. The limiting beliefs doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us. It just means that we may have to grow. As I mentioned with these habits, there's areas of growth. But not just the areas of growth external to us, but the growth in our own thoughts and the way that we think about ourselves and our situations. These are all areas that we have the opportunity to grow in. Sometimes this came up in my conversation with Arlene several weeks back in a podcast that we had. She mentioned how your ex might actually be right. That if you receive similar feedback from people that you've gone on dates with or people that have broken up with you, chances are we may need to grow in having the humility and recognizing that's an area that I need to grow in. Or even soliciting feedback. If we go to our friends and ask for feedback on ways that might make us more appealing, these are certain areas of growth that may be difficult for us to learn at first. But if we didn't know that those were areas that we could grow in, well, we have a huge advantage of being able to take steps forward in our own lives. This doesn't mean that there's something wrong with us, whether it's our habits or our identity. It's just growth areas that we can take steps forward in. Really diving into our beliefs today, and that's the area that I think all of us, no matter where we are coming from, it's not something that's wrong, it's just an area of growth. How do we overcome our limiting beliefs? Well, the first step is really just slowing down and gaining an awareness of the thoughts that we have. So we gain an awareness of our thoughts so that we can begin to transform them and really be able to absorb those new thoughts that we have. When we're gaining an awareness, we're thinking about these are the thoughts that I'm having, and then how does that then, the thoughts then impact the emotions that I feel about those thoughts. And as a result, because we're thinking a certain way, because we're feeling a certain way, we then have actions that we take based on those thoughts and those emotions. And then the results outside of ourselves come from those actions. So let me give you an example here. If we ask that thought, what's wrong with me? And a lot of times that thought's going to be more specific to you. What's wrong with me? We're going to experience some doubt, some hesitation, some frustration or fear, because I think that there's something wrong with me. So there's resulting emotions that come from that. And then in addition to that, our actions are going to be disempowered. We're going to have a lack of self-confidence. So if I'm going to a young adult event and I think that there's something wrong with me and I'm asking what's wrong with me, I'm going to be entering with a lack of confidence, with doubt. It's going to affect whether I go up to meet a woman and talk to her and create a conversation because I'm having this thought lingering. So whether or not I approach her, or if I do, it's going to impact how I'm interacting with her as well. And as a result, may impact how into the conversation she actually is. So you can see how our thoughts and our emotions and our actions then kind of combine and then enter into the results that we end up having from a particular situation. That's just one example. You could, of course, apply the thoughts, actions, and emotions to online dating and messaging and going on a first date and entering into a relationship and so on. Our thoughts really influence the results that we produce, so on and so forth there. Okay, so how do we overcome these limiting beliefs? Well, first step, as I mentioned before, it's gaining awareness. Gaining awareness. What is the thought? What is the specific thought that you might be wrestling with right now? And it's going to vary. The specific thought is going to vary person to person. It might be some variation of I'm not attractive enough. It might be. Or it could be some other variation of another thought there. But I'm going to start with something that is very personal to me. I am about 5'5" in shoes, so I'm shorter than the average man. So this is something that I've had to wrestle with myself. I have introverted tendencies. I tend to be more of an introvert, which you probably can't tell if you've just known me from the YouTube videos and the podcasts. It was a big step for me to be able to do something like this. But these are sorts of things that come up in my own life as well. But just getting that thought down, maybe just having it down on paper, helps to encourage us to take steps forward in overcoming that belief or that thought. And then asking the question, all right, where does this thought come from? Or what's the first memory that I had that is associated with this thought? I want to point out, too, that maybe this is something to take to therapy if it's something that is actually debilitating. If it's something that's preventing you from functioning, especially if it were to come to dating and relationships or some other area of your life, if it's debilitating and preventing you from functioning, that's much more of the realm of therapy. But if it's something that is keeping you from having confidence, keeping you from taking steps forward, and it's just uncomfortable, then that's something that's much more in the realm of in scope of coaching. But just asking where that thought comes from, where does that first memory come up, can help you gain a little bit more traction in overcoming this thought. Because what happens is then, if you are able to ask that next question, this next question that I present to you, what is the advantage of thinking this way? It's going to make a whole lot of sense. This is a weird question to ask about limiting beliefs. What's the advantage of the limiting beliefs? Because a lot of times we think about why are the limiting beliefs holding us back? But in all actuality, an advantage of these limiting beliefs is that it protects us from being uncomfortable. So for example, me being too short, I know, at least in terms of this, that I have a number of memories just growing up and childhood being the shortest in my class. But I think when it comes to dating, what it does, I've fallen into this idea. I don't even need to engage in conversations with taller women because I don't want to have that discomfort of being rejected. I want to have my comfort of being able to ask out women that I feel like I have a chance with. And that, in a certain sense, there's an advantage there. There may not be, it may not be entirely true. Who knows exactly what type of woman God's going to bring into my life and if she's going to be taller or shorter. But there is a legitimate protection that I put upon myself just by articulating that thought, whether it's empowering or disempowering or what have you. Another example is, as I mentioned, I'm an introvert. So as an introvert, it's not my natural tendency to go out there, put myself out there and meet new people. There's a self-preservation. There's a comfort of staying in my comfort zone. The thought protects me from being rejection, but it also, it keeps me from being comfortable. But ultimately, what I need to recognize within these thoughts that I have of being too short or being introverted, it can limit me. It can limit my opportunities in terms of who I meet and who I talk to. And it also limits me from being able to see opportunities and create opportunities. So that's the next question, is what is the disadvantage? So if there is an advantage, what is the disadvantage that is keeping you from moving forward? And I've kind of answered that question already as I've gone through the advantages here. Another thing too that is helpful is just to depersonalize the thought and have the thought come from out of your mind and more either in your hand or on your shoulder. I like to think about this. In the coaching world, we talk about these as gremlins. These are gremlins that are outside of us speaking these thoughts to us. I think in another sense, I like to think about it as the shoulder angels, in a sense where, you know, from The Emperor's New Groove, where there's Kronk, he has the angel, he has the demon on his shoulder. They're saying crazy things, cool, funny things here. And it's not an inaccurate representation of what's going on. I think it is a bit reductive or a bit of a caricature of what's going on. But there really is the battle for our minds in terms of these thoughts that we have that don't necessarily originate from us. They come from the outside world, which I think thinking about where these thoughts come from, that first experience, oftentimes these thoughts come from other places. But not to get too far into that, having these shoulder angels, if they're speaking to us, as opposed to the thoughts being in our heads, it helps depersonalize the thoughts. It helps us move to that next step, which is about transforming these thoughts into things that actually empower us. So instead of I'm too short or I'm too introverted, it's this gremlin or this shoulder angel is telling me, this fallen shoulder angel is telling me, you're too short, you're too introverted. Well, I can come up with a new job for that shoulder angel. And I can have it ask me an empowering question. And getting to that's that next question is, how can this shoulder angel, what job can you give to it? What's the new empowering question that you can give to that, or a new empowering belief if it's not a question? This is something that I want to just pause before I go a little bit deeper, that it's got to be something that is truly empowering, and it's got to be something that's personal to you. It shouldn't be about what you feel like you should be saying to yourself, or you feel like this shoulder angel should be saying to you. Avoid the cliches like, you are a beloved child of God, you are wonderfully made. Those could be helpful for you. What I'm saying is, avoid those statements that you feel are cliche in those things that you should say, as opposed to those things that really resonate with your heart. And it also is something that has to make sense. So, for instance, the shoulder angel who's saying to me, hey, you're too short. Instead, you can turn around, give that angel a new job, and your shoulder angel is telling you your height has nothing to do with the quality of man you become or the quality of woman you become. That's much more powerful. That's much more personal, at least to me, in hearing that new empowering thought. Another one is, oh, I'm just introverted, and that's just the way I am. The shoulder angel is telling me that. Well, changing that into, God strengthens you every single day to grow in becoming more outgoing. That's God's call for you. Just thinking about that really it gives me chills to kind of realize God is calling me to something great. He's calling me outside of myself. He's calling me to carry this particular cross, to lay my life down for the sake of potentially my bride in the future, but my vocation and my call today. So once you come up with that new empowering belief, the next part is solidifying that, really absorbing that into who you are, into your own new identity. The idea here, a couple different recommendations that I have would be, one, certainly to pray about this and allow God to speak his truth to you. But two, journaling. Being able to journal about this, journal about the reasons why that this new belief is actually true and is what God is speaking to you in prayer. What is the evidence that comes with this new belief? Another really helpful thing is to have some sort of reminder. A lot of my clients, when I go through an activity or an exercise like this in coaching, they write a sticky note. They put it on their computer or they put it on their desk just as a reminder of the new belief that they have. Another thing that people do is they have flashcards, and they'll write on one flashcard on one side the old belief. They'll strike through it once so they can still read it, but it's struck through. And then on the back, they have the new empowering belief. That way they can look at it, flip it over, and remind them of the new belief that they're really trying to integrate within themselves. And they can use that flashcard, say, as a bookmark for a book that they're reading, or leave it at their desk for however that they want to go about it. These are all different ways that this new belief, what it does is it's ultimately about helping you be creative and create new opportunities if it is your dating life that you're using these new beliefs for. It helps you grow in self-confidence and ultimately helps you be transformed into the image of Christ. And that's what the Christian journey is all about, is becoming conformed to the image of Christ. Last thing that I want to talk about in this episode is the difference between coaching and advice giving. I've talked about this in other episodes. I've kind of brought this up a little bit in this episode already, where we oftentimes get advice because we want to achieve certain results that we haven't when it comes to dating. And certain advice has been helpful in the past, especially give us peace, but hasn't helped us achieve results. And sometimes the advice that helped other people in their 20s may not be as productive for us if we are late 20s into our 30s now. I think about certain tips and dating advice that I've gotten of, hey, just pray this novena. Well, yeah, I've already done that. Or have you tried this app? Yes, I've tried that app before. Have you thought of just asking her out? Yes, I've asked like 40 different women out, whatever. Or even some fun, inspiring slogans that are, don't spend your single years chasing after your future spouse, chase after God and see who's running next to you, which are inspiring and important. A lot of times they don't actually address what we're struggling with or what we're trying to overcome, the obstacles that we're trying to overcome. And that's one of the things that I think advice giving can be helpful sometimes, but it doesn't actually answer the right question. It often answers the wrong question. Advice giving is external. Oftentimes it's superficial. It's not going deep enough. It's not actually addressing the things that we're really wrestling with and what we're trying to accomplish. And on the flip side of that, coaching is different. Coaching is not advice giving. It's not me giving you instructions. But 90% of real coaching is actually listening and asking good questions, good empowering questions that are going to help you move forward. And then another 10% of it might be putting out recommendations, but giving you the ownership to be able to choose, hey, is this recommendation right for me at this point in my life? The key here with coaching is helping you identify with what's holding you back. What is holding you back so that you can take ownership over your situation and you can take the necessary steps forward that you are committing to. Again, this is all about ownership. We have circumstances that are around us, but what it comes down to, the determining factor, as I said in the first episode of this series, the determining factor is you. And that's what coaching does, is it allows you to gain ownership over your situation. It allows you to gain an awareness of what are these thoughts and these emotions that are holding me back, and what are the ways that I can overcome these limiting beliefs that are keeping me from moving forward. I want to encourage you to take advantage of these podcasts, of these YouTube videos. Just as with any book or any media content, it may apply to you in a certain way, and hopefully it really reaches the areas that you are struggling with. But if a lot of times these resources don't feel like they can go deep enough because it's simply me talking into a camera, hopefully reaching you where you are. But if you're really looking to go much deeper, I want to give you that opportunity to take me on as your coach, even if it's just one session, you just want to get a feel for it. Because I'm confident that I can help in whatever situation that you're in to overcome stress, master your time and money, to overcome the state of perpetual singleness, to live your vocation today and pave a path for your vocation in the future as well. So I'm here as a resource for you. Feel free to book a coaching session so you can make progress on your God-inspired journey. With that, just want to recap this podcast episode today. The title is Why Asking What's Wrong With Me is the Wrong Question. There's limiting beliefs that hold us back. They prevent us from taking empowering action. And if we just focus on what's wrong with me, or is there something wrong with me, it distracts us from taking productive steps forward. We also discussed gaining awareness on our thoughts and transforming those thoughts to empower us and move us forward. And I want to encourage you to consider what sort of thoughts might be holding you back from achieving what your goals are, whether it's your relationships, your personal finances, your physical health, and so on. And then we touched on the difference between advice giving and coaching, and how coaching allows you to really go deep and solve the actual problems that are holding you back. So as I wrap up this podcast, again, I just want to encourage you to book your free session. You can check the show notes for ways to connect with me and book your free session. And with that, I want to just continue to encourage you to take steps forward. God has a major dream for you. He has a God-inspired dream for you. And I want to encourage you to continue to live inspired and live God-inspired. Thank you for watching this episode of the 8th Day Coaching Podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe on this YouTube channel, and check the description down below for any free offerings that I have, like my ebook on breaking the cycle of pressure in inaction for Catholic singles. Also, feel free to check out our other offerings at 8thdaycoaching.com.